Catherine, it seems like we've come so far from your classic book.
Yeah.
Help us now with the border tax. Peter Navarro suggests it can work for America. Noel Rubini with a spirited defense of not doing the border tax. Which should it be?
So I think when we look at the border tax, we have to remember that when you put on an import surcharge, it cascades through the supply chain and ends up being an export tax. And so whatever you think that you're going to be doing, the implication for exports is going to be greater in terms of creating a cost for exports than perhaps you're aware of. And the additional aspect about the border tax is a lot of discussion about whether or not the dollar will adjust and wipe out the whole effect. And the answer there, again, is not very likely because it's like which dollar? Is it the dollar against the peso? Is it the dollar against the euro? And so it's too facile to say, oh, well, the dollar will adjust. So it's going to end up being more costly. It's going to end up being costly to exports. And in the end, it will not achieve the objective that that they have in mind.
The singular distinction here, Dr. Mann, is model building. Dr. Navarro works with simplistic, bilateral, static models. Professor Rubini and Kruger, formerly with the IMF, and Kruger, among others, noticing a modern process system of industry which leads to complexity. Is the Navarro-Trump model just dated and too simple?
Well, we've never believed that looking at bilateral trade deficits was what you should be examining when understanding the impact of trade on a country. It's the overall deficit that is an issue, or maybe not an issue, but certainly not on a bilateral basis. And again, sort of a blanket border tax adjustment is going to have a much more negative effect on exports than you would think. We did some calculations that suggest that a 10% import tax would actually cause a 15% decline in U.S. exports. So it's a more than one-to-one cost for the exporters. And again, that's not the objective of the tax.
Tell me here, Lord King, if you would, the differential between border dynamics of a large exporting country like Germany, the struggles of the United Kingdom in Brexit, and the oddity of a dominant American system. These are all unique trading nations, aren't they? You can't use one analysis.
I think that's right, but I also think that we should recognize that over a long period of time, we've all benefited from the opportunity to trade with each other. After all, why would we want to put impediments in place to stop individuals and businesses trading with each other across borders? We don't do it within borders. We shouldn't necessarily do it across borders. And I think that, you know, Catherine's right, that there are real costs here to interfering with the natural way in which trade would otherwise operate. I think the initial proposal for a tax reform had some merit behind it. But I think what's very unfortunate is to combine a proposal for corporate tax reform with a quite separate proposal for the border tax adjustment. And I think that is a separate issue altogether. One of the big challenges, I think, in the modern world is to see how far we, as large countries, are prepared to subject ourselves to rules of the game which we would like to impose on other countries, but in return, to get them for accepting it, we need to impose it on ourselves. And I think this is where the issue of the border tax is likely to end up with a rather unfortunate argument in the World Trade Organization.
Dr. Mann, in your OECD forecast released today, you say the global economy may not be strong enough to withstand risks from increased trade barriers, but you also talk about the overblown stock market and potential currency volatility. So you're raising forecasts, but you're warning of the risks. If it goes badly wrong, do we risk seeing a recession, or because you're looking at 2 to 3% growth, we can't fall in a recession?
So I think what we're talking about is we've got an improvement in growth, 3.6 by 2018 for the global economy, but that's really flying very low. And when you're flying low and you get a downdraft from the financial system through a couple of different channels, or through changes in expectations for trade coming through the trade channel, you can wipe away all of that gains that we have in growth over that time period. So we're not talking a recession, but we are talking about a continuation, potentially a continuation of the low growth trap that we've had in the last 5 years. And we've seen the consequences of that, both economically in terms of rising inequality, but also politically in terms of disruption and populism. So when you're flying low, you don't want to take a chance on downdrafts, especially when they're self-inflicted.